And we're going to spend some time talking a little bit about liquidity and operating asset management ratios. So our first ratio in our problem on page 619 in our textbook, SE8, is to look at our current ratio. And our current ratio measures the short-term debt paying ability of our company by looking at its current assets and their ability to repay or cover our current liabilities. When we look at our current assets, they're $48,000 for our problem. Again, the numbers are in our textbook, and that's going to be divided by 36,000. So therefore, our current coverage ratio is 1.3 times our current liabilities. And we look at 2011, our current assets are 40,000 and our current liabilities are 44,000. And our calculation was a current ratio of 0.9. If you recall, when I gave you guys the notes relating to the liquidity ratio for the current assets to current liabilities, the current ratio, a rule of thumb for that was that we'd like to see it a little bit over 1 at least. So we can kind of see here in 2011, their liquidity, their current ratio measure was a little bit weak. Okay, let's look at our quick ratio, which our quick ratio is our assets. We're focusing on our current assets that convert to cash the most quickly. And so our ratio is made up of a cash, marketable securities, and accounts receivable. And this is all over our current liabilities. And then as our numerator, we're going to look at $14,000 in cash. We have no marketable securities, and then we had $20,000 in this problem in accounts receivable. And that's going to all be over our $36,000 in current liabilities. So that gives us a numerator of 34,000 over a denominator of 36,000. So their current coverage ratio is a little bit low. It's 0.9. But remember here, the difference here between our quick and our current is our current includes all current assets. Our quick is only focusing on these 3 assets. So if I didn't know what maybe something was in the quick ratio, I could look at my current assets and then deduct out things as well to back into the quick assets in a different fashion. Okay, let's look here again at the numbers. 14,000 plus there was 0 and plus 16,000 in accounts receivable. And then we have a denominator of 44,000. And then doing the math, we're going to have 30,000 here, 40,000, pardon me, 44,000 here. And that's going to give us a 0.7 times ratio. So again, we can see our liquidity measure got a little bit weaker again here. Now let's look at our receivable turnover ratio. The receivable turnover ratio basically tells us how many times in a year the accounts receivable asset is turning over. It's it's a measure of the relative size of the accounts receivable relative to the effectiveness of your credit policies in your company's ability to collect and convert those accounts receivable to cash. So let's look at the actual ratio formula, and it's net sales divided by average accounts receivable. So our net sales, which we've been using the same company here on these problems, is 360,000, and then we've got to get the average sales, average accounts receivable, which is the 20,000 plus the 16,000 divided by 2. And then that gives us a numerator of 360,000 and a denominator of 18,000, and it gives us a ratio of 20.2 times. And then in 2011, it was 290,000 over 16,000 plus 12,000 divided by 2. So it's 290,000. 290,000 divided by average accounts receivable of 14,000, and that gives us 20.7 times. So basically they're saying that they turned over their accounts receivable slightly slower in fiscal year 2012 compared to 2011. And let's look at our days uncollected. This is the days in the year divided by our receivable turnover. Okay, average accounts receivable. And our days are 365, and then we use this number up here from our accounts receivable turnover of 20 times, and we get 18.3 days. So it's saying it takes us on average 18.3 days to collect our receivables. And then on this side, 365 times 20.7, and in this particular year, they were able to collect their receivables in an average of 17.6 days. And if we look at this again between the receivable turnover and the days uncollected, both of these weakened a little bit during this period between 2011 to 2012. Let's look at our inventory turnover. So for inventory turnover, we're going to take the formula of cost of goods sold and divide that by the average inventory. And our cost of goods sold is 224,000. We have 14,000 in inventory plus 10,000, beginning and ending, divided by 2. So it's going to be 224,000 divided by 12,000, and that's going to give us 18.7 times. And then for 2011, we had 176,000, and then 10,000 plus 8,000 divided by 2 for a 176,000 over 9,000, which makes this 19.6. Okay, so our inventory in 2012 turned an average of 18.7 times, and in 2011 it turned more frequently. It turned 19.6 times. So our days in the year for our inventory on hand is going to be the numerator, days in the year, over our average, over our inventory turnover, number, which this is 365, and this is 18.7 times, which gives us 19.5 days on average that it takes for us to turn our inventory in 2012. And then we've got 365 divided by 19.6 is going to give us 18.6 days for us to be able to convert our inventory to cash, or inventory to a sale in this case. So it clearly was a little bit quicker here than here. Then let's look at our payables. Payables turnover, it's going to be the cost of goods sold plus or minus, depending on what took place, plus or minus the inventory change. And then that's going to be over the average accounts payable. So if we look at our problem here, our cost of goods sold in this particular problem was $224,000. And then we're going to add or subtract the inventory levels. And what the problem says is that the inventory levels were 14,000 in 2012 and 10,000 in 2011. So that represents a $4,000 increase. So we're going to put that here as positive 4,000. So it increased by 4,000. So then we have to get our average accounts payable, and this is 24,000 plus 20,000 per the information in the textbook, and divide that by 2. So therefore we have 228,000 as our numerator, 22,000 as our denominator, and what we can say is that this company's inventory accounts payable turned over 10.4 times in the year 2012. Let's look at our same data for 2011. 176,000 plus there was a change of inventory of plus 2,000. So then we're going to look at our average, trying to get our average accounts payable, and it's going to be our 20,000, our beginning and our ending, divided by 2, which is going to be 178,000 divided by 19,000 is going to be 9.4 times. And then to calculate our days payable, we've got our days payable over our payables turnover, 365 divided by the 10.4 equals 35.1 days, and compared with 2011, 365 over 9.4 is going to give us 38.8 days. So we can see that with our payables, we are now trying to repay our payables a little bit more quickly. That's going to present what kind of a challenge to our company? It's going to present a cash flow challenge to our company, because they are converting their inventory a little bit more slowly, and they're collecting their receivables a little bit more slowly. We learned that on the previous page. Okay. But yet they're paying their payables a little bit more quickly. So this could present a cash flow or liquidity crunch for our company. Is possible. So this would be a little bit of a red flag. We would maybe want to explore this a little bit more. Okay? And I believe those are all of the questions for SE8. Okay?